Kale pressed his long, thin fingers against the communication panel. His hands shook as he looked at the red lights flashing across his screen. Each light meant another city was under attack. Each flash meant thousands of his people were dying. The Veltari had never seen war before. For 10,000 years, they had lived in peace on their beautiful world of Serenitas. Their cities were made of crystal and silver. Their gardens stretched for miles under gentle purple skies. They had no weapons because they had never needed any. Now the Krexnari had come. Kale had studied other species in school. He knew the Krexnari were different from his people. Where the Veltari were tall and graceful, the Krexnari were thick and covered in hard shells. Where the Veltari loved art and music, the Krexnari only understood conquest. They moved like one giant mind, taking what they wanted from world after world. "Send the message again," said Elder Mira behind him. Her voice was calm, but Kale could see fear in her large silver eyes. "Someone must hear us." Kale looked at his equipment. The quantum transmitter was their greatest invention. It could send messages faster than light across the entire galaxy. But what good was talking to the stars when death rained from the sky? Broadcasting. "On all frequencies," Kale said. His voice cracked like a young boy's, though he was 43 years old. "This is Serenitas, calling any ship, any civilization that can hear this. We need help. The Krexnari fleet is destroying our world. We have no weapons. We have no shields. We are a peaceful people. Please, if anyone can hear this, we are located in the Cygnus Arm, Sector 779. Please help us." He stopped the recording and looked at Elder Mira. "Should I say more?" She shook her head. "Send it. Send it to everyone." Kyle's fingers moved over the controls. The message shot out into space, traveling faster than anything in the universe. It would reach dozens of civilizations within hours. Surely someone would come. The first reply came from the Zephyrian Trade Federation. Kale's heart jumped when he saw their symbol appear on his screen. The Zephyrians had hundreds of ships. They were rich and powerful, but their message was short and cold. "Federation policy prohibits intervention in military conflicts. Suggest immediate evacuation. Good luck." Kyle stared at the screen. Evacuation? They had no ships that could carry their entire population. Most Veltari had never even left their planet. The next message came from the Centauran Council. These were old, wise beings who had solved conflicts across the galaxy for thousands of years. "The Council sympathizes with your situation," their message said. "However, our fleets are engaged in peacekeeping operations in the Andromeda sector. We cannot provide assistance at this time. We will remember your sacrifice." Remember their sacrifice? Kyle felt sick. They didn't want to be remembered. They wanted to live. More messages came in. The hegemony of Tal Nash didn't even reply. The Jovian Alliance sent their regrets. The Stellar Compact offered to negotiate with the Krexnari after the situation was resolved. Each message was the same. No one would help. Elder Mira put her hand on Kyle's shoulder. Her touch was gentle and warm, like everything else about their people. "Keep trying," she whispered. "There must be someone." Through the crystal walls of their communication center, Kyle could see the sky. Red streaks of light fell like angry rain. Each streak was a Krexnari weapon hitting another target. The beautiful silver towers of their capital city were crumbling one by one. "Wait," Kale said, looking at his screen. "There's another signal. Someone else received our message. Elder Mira leaned forward. Who? Kyle frowned at the strange symbols on his screen. I don't recognize this language. The computer is translating now. He paused. It says, Earth? Earth? Elder Mira's eyes widened. But that's impossible. Earth is in the forbidden zone. No one is supposed to go there. Kyle checked his star charts. Earth was listed as a quarantine world. The file said it was a Class 13 death world, which meant nothing could survive there. But the signal was definitely coming from that system. Before he could wonder more about it, another message appeared on his screen. This one was imperfect. Veltari, this is Terra Nova Station receiving your distress call. We understand your situation. Help is coming. Hold on. Terra Nova Station? Elder Mira looked confused. Who are they? Kale was already typing a reply. This is Serenitas Communications. Who are you? What ships do you have? The Krexnari have 47 vessels, including 12 battleships. The answer came back quickly. We are sending 3 ships. ETA 18 hours. Do not give up. Kyle's heart sank. 3 ships against 47? It was hopeless. The beings from Earth didn't understand what they were facing. Only 3 ships, he told Elder Mira. They must not know how big the Krexnari fleet is. Elder Mira was quiet for a long moment. Outside, another building exploded in a flash of green light. Maybe they don't understand numbers the same way we do, she said finally. Maybe their 3 ships are very large. Kyle wanted to believe her, but he had seen the Krexnari fleet. Each battleship was the size of a small moon. Their weapons could crack planets. What could 3 ships do against that? Still, he kept the communication channel open. Every few hours, a message came from the Earth station. Still coming. Hold position. Help arrives soon. As the night passed, more Veltari cities fell. The crystal gardens where children played were turned to ash. The silver libraries where poets wrote were blown to pieces. The Krexnari moved across their world, like a disease, taking everything and leaving nothing. But the messages from Earth kept coming. In the early morning, when the purple sky was full of smoke and fire, Kyle received a different message. This one came with strange markings he had never seen before. The computer took longer to translate it. This is Admiral Yuki Nara of Earth Defense Command. 3 ships are not much, but they are what we have. We know what it means to fight when the odds are impossible. We know what it means to protect what matters. We are not like the other species who turned away from your call. We will be there soon. Kyle read the message 3 times. There was something different about these Earth beings. They didn't promise victory. They didn't say everything would be fine. They just said they would come. Elder Mira, Kale called. I think these Earth people are not like the others. She came to read the message. When she finished, she was quiet. For a long time. What kind of place must Earth be, she said slowly, to create people who would fly across the galaxy to help strangers? Kyle didn't know. But for the first time since the Krexnari arrived, he felt something that wasn't fear. He felt hope. Outside, the sky grew darker as more ships joined the enemy fleet. But somewhere in the black between the stars, 3 ships from a forbidden world were coming to help. Kyle kept his transmitter running, sending location data and tactical information to the approaching Earth ships. He didn't know what these strangers looked like or what weapons they had. He only knew they had heard a cry for help and decided to answer. Maybe that would be enough. War Prime Thexkar stood in the center of his command ship, watching the screens that showed his fleet destroying another weak civilization. The Veltari had been even easier than he expected. Their cities burned beautifully, and their people ran like frightened insects. This was his 48th conquest. Soon Serenitas would be stripped of its resources, and its people would serve the Krexnari Empire. It was the natural order of things. The strong took from the weak. "War Prime," called his tactical officer. "3 ships have appeared at the edge of the system." Thexkar barely looked up from his reports. "Refugees fleeing the system?" "No, sir. They are moving toward us." That got Thexkar's attention. He walked to the main display and studied the readings. 3 small ships were indeed heading straight for his fleet of 47 vessels. It made no sense. "Have they responded to our identification demands?" he asked. "No, sir. They ignore all communications." Thexkar studied the strange ships on his screen. They were unlike anything he had seen before. Most species built their ships long and smooth, designed for speed and efficiency. These ships looked different. They were thick and heavy, built like they expected to take damage. "What weapons do they carry?" he asked. His weapons officer made a confused sound. "We cannot detect their weapon systems, War Prime. Our scanners show only basic metal construction, no energy signatures that we recognize." "Perhaps they are merchants, trying to escape," suggested his first officer. "Many species panic when they see our fleet." But Thexkar wasn't convinced. The ships moved too deliberately, too purposefully. They weren't running away. They were coming closer. On board the lead Earth ship, Commander Dong Kira stood on the bridge and watched the Krexnari fleet spread across her screens. 47 ships. She had fought against bad odds before, but this was different. This was impossible. "Captain," said her tactical officer, Lieutenant Han Jie, "I count 12 heavy battleships. Each one outguns our entire task force." Dong nodded. She had read the reports about the Krexnari. They were professional soldiers, experienced in fleet combat. They had never lost a major battle. But they had never fought humans before. "Any word from the Veltari?" she asked. "Still transmitting from the surface," replied her communications officer. "They're giving us tactical data about the enemy fleet. Also, sir, they keep asking who we are." Dong smiled grimly. She could imagine how the peaceful Veltari must feel, watching 3 tiny ships approach an overwhelming enemy force. "Tell them we're from Earth and we got their message." "They're asking about Earth, sir. Says it's listed as a forbidden system in their databases. Tell them that's exactly why we're here." Behind her, Colonel Bo Nam checked his equipment one more time. He commanded the Marines aboard their ship, soldiers trained for boarding actions and ground combat. In a fleet battle, Marines usually had little to do except wait. But Bo had a feeling this wouldn't be a normal fleet battle. "Colonel," Dong called to him, "how are your people feeling?" Bo looked around at his Marines. They were checking weapons, reviewing ship layouts, and preparing for combat. They looked calm and ready, the way humans always did before a fight. "They're good, sir. A little excited, actually. We've been training for years, but we've never had a chance to see how our equipment works against alien technology." Dong raised an eyebrow. "Excited? Ma'am, we're going up against the most successful military force in the galaxy. If we win this, we'll know we can handle anything out here." That was very human thinking, Dong realized. Other species might be terrified by those odds. Humans saw them as a challenge. "Admiral Nara on the command channel," announced the communications officer. Dong accepted the transmission from the flagship. Admiral Yuki Nara's voice was calm and steady, the way it always was before battle. "All ships, this is Admiral Nara. I know you're all looking at the tactical display. I know you're thinking about the odds. Let me remind you why we're here. 18 hours ago, a peaceful civilization sent out a cry for help. Every other species in the galaxy ignored them. We didn't." Dong could hear the Admiral's voice echoing through the ship as it was broadcast to all crew members. "The Veltari have no weapons and no experience with war. They're going to die unless we stop it. Yes, we're outnumbered. Yes, we're outgunned. But we're not outfought. We're humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to survive where others couldn't. We learned to fight when others wouldn't. Today, we show the galaxy what Earth produces." The transmission ended, and Dong felt the familiar calm that came before combat. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this their entire careers. On the planet below, Yi Velsana frantically worked at her communication station in the underground bunker where the survivors had taken shelter. She was a scientist, not a military expert, but she was trying to help the strange ships that had come to rescue them. "Unknown vessels," she transmitted. "This is Veltari Science Station. We have been monitoring the Krexnari fleet. They have 47 ships, including 12 battleships. Their weapons have an effective range of 50,000 kilometers. Please reconsider your approach." The answer came back in a voice that sounded female and strangely calm. "This is Commander Dong Kira of the Earthship Taeguk. We understand the odds. We're proceeding anyway." "But you only have 3 ships." Ye couldn't keep the desperation out of her voice. "Ma'am, we're from Earth. 3 ships is what we have. 3 ships is what we'll use." Ye checked her database again. Earth was marked as a Class 3 death world. The file said the planet had extreme weather, dangerous animals, and toxic environments. According to galactic science, nothing intelligent could evolve there. But these ships were clearly built by intelligent beings. What kind of intelligence could survive on a death world? Back on the Krexnari flagship, War Prime Thexkar was growing impatient. The 3 unknown ships had not responded to any of his communications. They continued to approach his fleet in a straight line, as if they had no fear. "Range to unknown vessels?" he asked. 60,000 kilometers and closing. War Prime. Signal. The fleet. Defensive formation. If they do not stop, we will destroy them." His tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, they show no energy signatures. They may be defenseless refugees." "Then they will die quickly," Thexkar replied. The Krexnari way was simple. Anything that did not obey was destroyed. At 50,000 kilometers, he gave the order to fire. Energy beams lanced out from a dozen Krexnari ships, enough firepower to destroy a city. The weapons hit the lead Earth ship directly. When the energy faded, the ship was still there. "Report," Thexkar demanded. "Direct hits confirmed, but the ship is still operational. They appear to have some kind of armor we've never seen before." Thexkar stared at the display. The unknown ship's hull was glowing red from the heat of the energy weapons, but it hadn't exploded. Instead, it had actually increased speed. "Sir," his communications officer said nervously, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead ship. Put it through." A new voice filled the command center. It was speaking a language the Krexnari had never heard, but their computers translated it quickly. "Krexnari fleet, This is Admiral Yuki Nara of the Earth Defense Force. You are attacking a peaceful civilization. Withdraw immediately or we will stop you. Thexkar couldn't believe what he was hearing. 3 tiny ships were threatening his entire fleet. Unknown vessel, he replied. You are greatly outnumbered. Surrender now, and we may allow you to live. The response came back immediately. We don't surrender. We're human. That word meant nothing to Thexkar. Human. He had never heard of this species before, but he was about to learn what it meant. The first human weapon fired at exactly 49,000 kilometers. War Prime Thexkar saw nothing on his sensors. No energy beam, no plasma bolt, no missile signature. One moment his destroyer was there, and the next moment it was spinning, out of control with a massive hole punched through its center. What hit us? He demanded. His weapons officer stared at his instruments in confusion. I don't know, War Prime. No energy discharge detected. No projectile tracked. The ship just exploded. Lieutenant Sung Nam pulled his fighter into a tight spiral as Krexanari interceptors swarmed around him. The enemy ships were faster and had better weapons, but they flew like they were still thinking about gravity and atmosphere. Sung had grown up in the asteroid belts around Earth, where you learned to think in 3 dimensions, or you died young. He flipped his fighter upside down and fired his engines backward, a move that would kill most organic pilots from the G-forces. The Krexanari pilot following him couldn't react fast enough. Sung's bullets tore through the alien fighter's hull like paper. Humans didn't use energy weapons in space. Energy was wasteful and could be deflected. They used kinetic rounds. Simple. Metal bullets fired at incredible speeds. The aliens had never faced weapons that didn't show up on their sensors until impact. Commander Dong Kira watched her tactical display as her small fleet engaged 47 enemy ships. It should have been suicide. Instead, it was turning into something impossible. Tagak to all fighters, she transmitted. Use pattern Delta 7. Treat them like asteroid miners, not military pilots. Her fighter squadrons acknowledged and changed their tactics. Instead of the formal combat maneuvers used by most galactic militaries, they began flying like they were dodging tumbling rocks and solar storms. It was chaos to anyone watching, but to humans it was natural. On board the Aegis, Captain Yoon Kara studied the damage reports. Her ship had taken hits that should have destroyed it. Hull breaches in 12 sections. Life support failing on 3 decks. Main engines running at 60%. Any other species would have retreated or surrendered. Instead, Captain Kara ordered her crew to prepare for ramming speed. Ma'am, her first officer said carefully, are you sure about this? Look at those ships, she replied, pointing at the Krexnari battleships. They're built for long-range combat. Big, powerful, but not designed to take impacts. We are. That was the difference between humans and every other species in the galaxy. Other races built ships to avoid damage. Humans built ships expecting to take damage and keep fighting. War Prime. Thexkar realized he was fighting something completely new. The human ships moved wrong. They fought wrong. They should have been destroyed in the first few minutes, but instead they were tearing through his fleet like predators. Focus all fire on the lead ship, he ordered. Destroy it now. Energy beams from 20 ships concentrated on the human flagship. The hull turned white-hot under the assault. Atmosphere vented from dozens of breaches. Anyone watching would think the ship was finished. Instead, it accelerated toward the Krexnari line. Admiral Yuki Nara stood on her bridge as alarms screamed around her. Half her crew was dead or wounded. The ship was falling apart around them. But her engines still worked, and her weapons still fired. All remaining ships, she transmitted. Execute Terran Protocol 7. On the planet below, Dr. John Velnata watched the battle through his telescope and tried to understand what he was seeing. The human ships were taking damage that should have been impossible to survive. Explosions that would vaporize Veltari vessels barely seemed to slow them down. It's like they're used to fighting in impossible conditions, he told his colleagues. Like they evolved expecting everything to try to kill them. That was closer to the truth than he knew. Terran Protocol 7 was a tactic developed for fighting in asteroid fields and radiation storms, where your ship might be damaged, your sensors might fail, and your weapons might malfunction. You used whatever worked and improvised the rest. Lieutenant Sung Nam's fighter had lost its main guns, so he began ramming enemy ships with his reinforced hull. Commander Dong's ship lost its navigation, so she used visual tracking and fired manually. Captain Yoon's engines were failing, so she coasted toward the enemy using momentum and physics. To the Krex Nari, it looked like madness. Ships fighting with no sensors, pilots making impossible maneuvers, crews working in conditions that should have killed them. To humans, it was Tuesday. The turning point came when Captain Yoon Kara made her final decision. Her ship was dying around her, but she was still moving toward the Krex Nari flagship. Her weapons were gone, her shields were down. Her crew was evacuating to emergency pods, but she still had one weapon left. "This is Captain Kara to all ships," she transmitted. "It's been an honor serving with you." War Prime Thexkar realized what was happening just seconds too late. The human ship wasn't trying to escape or surrender. It was trying to ram his flagship. Faceive. "Maneuvers!" he screamed, "but capital ships don't turn quickly." The Aegis hit the Krex Nari flagship at 17% of light speed. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. When the light faded, both ships were gone, along with 5 more Krex Nari vessels caught in the blast. The remaining human ships, battered and bleeding atmosphere, continued fighting. Yivel Sana watched her instruments in shock. The humans had just lost a third of their fleet, but they weren't retreating. If anything, they seemed to be fighting harder. "What kind of species does this?" she whispered. Her answer came from the tactical display. The 2 remaining human ships had changed formation. Instead of trying to fight the Krex Nari fleet ship to ship, they were using the debris from destroyed vessels as weapons. The Tsunami, Admiral Nara's flagship, fired its remaining missiles not at enemy ships, but at the wreckage floating between the fleets. The explosions sent chunks of metal flying like bullets, turning the battlefield into a deadly storm of shrapnel. The Taeguk, badly damaged but still fighting, began herding enemy ships into the debris field. Commander Dong used her ship like a sheepdog, forcing the Krex Nari vessels into positions where they couldn't maneuver effectively. It was a tactic no other species would even consider. Most civilizations tried to keep battlefields clean and organized. Humans turned chaos into a weapon. War Prime Thexkar found himself in a situation he had never faced before. His fleet still outnumbered the humans 20-1. But somehow he was losing. These Deathworld creatures fought with a desperation and creativity that his people couldn't match. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from some of our captains." "Surrender?" Thexkar couldn't believe it. "We still have 20 ships." "Yes, sir, but they're afraid. The humans keep fighting no matter how much damage they take. Our crews think they might be insane." That was when Thexkar understood. His people were used to fighting civilized wars with civilized rules. When things got too dangerous, you retreated and tried again later. It was logical and sensible. But humans weren't logical or sensible. They were something else entirely. All ships, he transmitted, hating the words even as he spoke them. Withdraw to jump distance. We're leaving this system. For the first time. In Krexnari history, his fleet retreated from a smaller force. As the alien ships pulled back and jumped to hyperspace, the two remaining human vessels hung in space like wounded animals. The Taeguk was barely holding together. The tsunami had lost most of its crew, but they had won. On the planet below, Kale stared at his communication equipment in amazement. 3 human ships had defeated a fleet that could have conquered half the galaxy. How? He whispered. The answer came from Admiral Nara's damaged ship. We're from Earth. We don't know how to quit. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Yuki Nara walked through the crystal gardens of Harmonias, the Veltari capital city. The gardens had been damaged by the Krexnari bombardment, but the Veltari were already working to repair them. Everywhere she looked, she saw the gentle aliens carefully tending to broken plants and damaged sculptures. It was so different from Earth, where nature itself was the enemy. Ambassador Mika Velcora walked beside her, trying not to stare at the human admiral. The Veltari had been studying their rescuers for 3 days, and everything they learned was more shocking than the last discovery. Your bones, Ambassador Velcora said carefully. Our doctors say they are 4 times denser than ours, and your muscles. We evolved under higher gravity, Admiral Nara explained. Earth pulls harder than most worlds. We had to adapt. They passed a group of human engineers working with Veltari technicians to repair the communication array. Ambassador Velcora watched Dr. Hanakira casually lift a piece of equipment that required 4 Veltari working together. The human woman wasn't even straining. Is everything on your world so demanding? The ambassador asked. Admiral Nara smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. Our weather can kill you in minutes. We have storms that could flatten this entire city, animals that hunt in packs and consider humans food, diseases that change faster than we can cure them, earthquakes that reshape continents overnight. Ambassador Velcora stopped walking. How do you survive? We adapt. We fight. We never give up. The Admiral's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she was discussing the weather. That's what makes us human. They entered the Hall of Records, where Chief Historian Ko Velthara was waiting with a collection of ancient documents. The elderly Veltari looked nervous as he spread out star charts and historical records. Admiral, he said formally, there are things about your species that you need to know. Things the galaxy has been hiding. Ko activated a holographic display that showed the spiral arms of their galaxy. Dozens of worlds were marked in different colors. These are the civilizations that make up the galactic community, he explained. Garden worlds like ours marked in blue, ocean worlds in green, desert worlds in yellow. Admiral Nara studied the display. I don't see any death worlds. That's because they're quarantined, Ko said quietly. He touched a control and new markers appeared on the map. These were marked in red, and they were surrounded by empty space. Death worlds are isolated. Ships are forbidden to approach them. Why? Ko hesitated, then brought up another display. This one showed historical records going back thousands of years. Every few millennia, a species emerges from a death world. They don't join the galactic community peacefully. They conquer it, the Records showed the rise and fall of multiple civilizations. The Zarathi, who had emerged from a world of acid rain and radioactive storms 5,000 years ago. They had built an empire spanning half the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing. The Draconi, from a planet where the very air was poisonous, who had enslaved dozens of species before destroying themselves in civil war. Deathworld species are different, Ko continued. They're stronger, more aggressive, more adaptable. Garden World civilizations can't compete with them. Admiral Nara was quiet for a long moment. So Earth is quarantined because you're afraid of us. The galactic community has been afraid of Earth for 200 years, Ko admitted. Ever since we detected your first radio signals, a Class Thuthrine death world with intelligent life, it was unprecedented. Class Thuthrine? Ko pulled up Earth's file. The classification was worse than Admiral Nara had imagined. Extreme weather patterns, massive predators, toxic atmosphere in early development, frequent extinction events, radiation exposure from solar activity. According to our models, Ko said, nothing should be able to evolve intelligence on Earth. The fact that you exist at all violates everything we know about biology. They were joined by Dr. J. Velkisa, a Veltari philosopher who had been studying human behavior since the rescue. She was young for a Veltari, only about 300 years old, with bright silver eyes that missed nothing. I've been watching your people work, she said to Admiral Nara. You repair things differently than we do. When something breaks, we replace it carefully, perfectly. When something breaks for you, you fix it with whatever you have and make it work better than before. She gestured toward the window, where they could see human and Veltari crews working together. Your Dr. Kira took our quantum transmitter and improved it using spare parts from your ship. It now works at twice the efficiency. How? We're used to making things work with limited resources, Admiral Nara replied. On Earth, you use what you have or you die. Dr. Velkisa nodded thoughtfully. That's what I don't understand. Your entire species thinks like survivors. Even in victory, even in safety, you prepare for the next disaster. Why? Admiral Nara walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful city. Crystal spires reaching toward purple skies. Gardens where children played safely. Rivers that ran, clean and clear, because disasters always come, she said simply. On Earth, if you're not ready for the next catastrophe, there won't be a next generation. Ambassador Velcora joined them at the window. And that's why you came when others wouldn't. You heard our distress call and saw a disaster happening. We saw people who needed help. But you could conquer us, Dr. Velkisa said suddenly. Your 3 ships, badly damaged, defeated a fleet that we couldn't even scratch. What happens when you bring a real military force? What happens when Earth sends 100 ships? 1,000? The question hung in the air like a threat. Admiral Nara turned to face the 3 Veltari, and they could see something in her eyes that they had never seen before. Not anger, not ambition, but something deeper. We didn't come here to conquer, she said. We came because someone asked for help. But you could, Ambassador Velcora pressed. You could take our world, our resources, our technology. We couldn't stop you. Why would we want to? The simplicity of the question shocked them. Dr. Velkisa spoke first. For resources? Territory? Power? We have resources on Earth. We have territory. And power? Admiral Nara shook her head. Power is just responsibility with a different name. Why would we want to be responsible for your world when you're doing fine taking care of it yourselves? Ko brought up another display, this one showing recent communications between various civilizations. The galaxy is watching this, Admiral. 12 species have formed a coalition to discuss the human threat. They believe Earth is preparing to expand and conquer. What do you believe? Admiral Nara asked. Ko was quiet for a moment. I believe you're telling the truth, but I also believe that truth is going to be very hard for others to accept. Dr. Velkisa activated another hologram, this one showing trade routes and shipping lanes. Look at this from the galaxy's perspective. For thousands of years, world species have emerged to conquer and destroy. Now humans appear, defeat the most successful military force in known space, and claim they only want to help. How do we prove that to species who have never seen anything like you? Admiral Nara studied the galactic map. Earth sat alone in its quarantine zone, surrounded by empty space and fear. What do you suggest? An alliance, Ambassador Velcora said immediately, between Veltari and humans. Show the galaxy that Deathworld species can be partners, not conquerors. And if they don't believe us? Ko's voice was grim. Then they'll try to destroy Earth before you become too powerful to stop. Admiral Nara looked out at the peaceful city again. Children played in gardens while their parents worked to rebuild what the war had damaged. It was everything Earth wasn't: safe, gentle, predictable. But maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed to learn about humans. That they could protect gentleness without destroying it. An alliance, she said finally. The first partnership between a garden world and a death world. The galaxy will think we're insane, Dr. Velkisa warned. Admiral Nara smiled. And this time it was genuine. Maybe. But they said the same thing about 3 human ships attacking 47 alien warships. And how did that work out? Ambassador Velcora asked. We won. 6 months after the Battle of Serenitas, Director Nari Velhana stood in a laboratory that would have been impossible to imagine before the humans arrived. Half the equipment was elegant Veltari technology, all crystal matrices and quantum fields. The other half was crude human engineering, metal and circuits that looked like it had been built in a garage. Together they created miracles. Show me the test results, she said to Dr. Yu Nara, Admiral Nara's daughter, who had arrived with the second wave of human scientists. Yu activated a holographic display that showed their latest creation, a ship design that combined Veltari efficiency with human durability. The hull can withstand direct energy weapon hits that would vaporize any existing ship. The engines are 40% more efficient than current Veltari designs. And the life support systems can keep both species alive in conditions that would kill anyone else. Nari studied the design with amazement. How is this possible? Your people build things to work perfectly in perfect conditions, Yu explained. We build things to work adequately in terrible conditions. Put them together, and you get something that works perfectly in any conditions. It was a pattern they had seen throughout the Alliance. Veltari precision combined with human adaptability created technologies that neither species could have, developed alone. Medical systems that could treat injuries in the middle of space battles. Communication arrays that worked through solar storms and electromagnetic interference. Weapons that could be repaired with spare parts and scrap metal, but not everyone in the galaxy was happy about these developments. Ambassador Grixtel of the Zephyrian Trade Federation stood in his ship's observation deck, watching the joint human-Veltari fleet conducting training exercises. His orders were to monitor the situation, but everyone knew he was there to spy. What he saw terrified him. The mixed crews moved with an efficiency that shouldn't have been possible. Veltari officers provided strategic thinking and technical expertise. Human crew members handled damage control and emergency repairs. When the ships took simulated battle damage, they didn't slow down or retreat. They adapted and kept fighting. "Sir," his aide reported, "we've documented 17 new technologies in the past month alone. Ship designs, weapon systems, defensive measures. All of them are superior to anything in the current galactic arsenal." Grixtel nodded grimly. He had been trading across the galaxy for over a century, and he understood economics. The human Veltari alliance wasn't just military cooperation. It was technological revolution. Within a few years, every other civilization would be obsolete, unless they acted first. The coalition had been forming quietly for months. 12 species, led by Admiral Zek Talnash of the Hegemony, had agreed that the human threat needed to be eliminated before it grew too powerful. They had assembled a fleet of over 300 ships from across the galaxy. They called it Operation Stellar Cleansing. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Jin Kara stood in the Sol Defense Command Center, studying intelligence reports with growing concern. Jin was the sister of Captain Yun Kara, who had died ramming the Krexnari flagship. She had volunteered for this assignment specifically to honor her sister's sacrifice. "The Coalition fleet is moving," reported her intelligence officer. 317 ships from 12 different species, all heading for Sol system. Jin studied the tactical display. It was an overwhelming force, designed to destroy Earth's defenses before humanity could respond. "How long until they arrive?" 72 hours. "And our forces?" 43 ships in the Sol Defense Fleet. Another 28 joint human Veltari vessels. "The Veltari are sending everything they have." Jin nodded. 71 ships against 317. The odds were actually better than at Serenitas. "Send a message to the Coalition fleet," she ordered. "Tell them they're welcome to visit Sol system peacefully. If they come in peace, we'll show them around. If they come for war, we'll give them one." The Coalition's response came 12 hours later. Admiral Zek Talnash's message was broadcast on all frequencies so the entire galaxy could hear it. "People of the galaxy, we come to Sol system to eliminate a threat that could destroy our civilization. The humans are Deathworld predators who will conquer and enslave us all if we don't act now. We do this not for conquest, but for survival." Jin smiled grimly as she recorded her response. "Admiral Zek, this is Fleet Admiral Jin Kara of the Sol, Defense Force. We're not predators, we're just humans. But if you want to find out what that means, come ahead." When the Coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, they expected to find Earth's defenses clustered around the home planet. Instead, they found something impossible. The human Veltari fleet was spread throughout, the system in a formation that made no tactical sense. Ships were positioned near asteroids, around gas giant moons, even inside the radiation belt of Jupiter. It looked like chaos. "What are they doing?" Admiral Zek asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. Their formation violates every principle of fleet combat." What Admiral Zek didn't understand was that humans didn't fight like other species. They had grown up in a solar system full of dangers: radiation, asteroids, solar storms, gravitational anomalies. To them, space wasn't empty. It was full of weapons waiting to be used. War Coordinator Pel Velnara stood beside Fleet Admiral Jin on the bridge of their flagship, watching the Coalition fleet approach. Pel was the first Veltari to achieve a military rank, trained by human instructors who taught her to think like a survivor instead of a victim. "They're moving in a standard galactic formation," Pel observed. "Battleships in the center, destroyers on the flanks, fighters screening ahead." "Perfect," Jin replied. "Execute Operation Solar Storm." What happened next became legendary across the galaxy. The human Veltari fleet didn't attack the Coalition directly. Instead, they attacked the solar system itself. Missiles struck carefully, placed charges on asteroid belts, sending clouds of rock and metal flying through space. Nuclear weapons detonated in Jupiter's magnetosphere, creating electromagnetic pulses that disrupted enemy sensors. Ships hiding behind moons used gravitational slingshots to accelerate far beyond normal speeds. The Coalition found themselves fighting not just a fleet, but an entire star system that had been turned into a weapon. Captain So Kira, commanding one of the joint vessels, used a tactic his ancestors would have recognized. He hid his ship behind a comet and waited for enemy vessels to pass by. When a Coalition destroyer came within range, he fired his engines and came out of the comet's tail like a predator attacking from ambush. The destroyer never saw him coming. Throughout the system, similar scenes played out. Human Veltari ships appeared from behind planets, out of asteroid fields, from within the coronas of distant moons. They fought like pirates and guerrillas, using the environment as their ally. But the real shock came when the Coalition tried to attack Earth itself. As the surviving enemy ships approached the home planet, they found it defended by orbital stations that looked like they had been built for a war zone. Massive metal constructs covered in weapons and armor designed to fight in the vacuum of space. Those aren't space stations, Admiral Zek realized with growing horror. Those are cities. He was right. Humanity had built their orbital habitats expecting them to be attacked. Millions of humans lived and worked in structures that could serve as fortress in wartime. The Coalition wasn't attacking a planet's defenses. They were attacking an entire civilization that had prepared for war. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Coalition fleet was in full retreat. Of the 317 ships that had come to destroy Earth, fewer than 50 escaped. In the aftermath, elder statesman Chin Veltheris of the Veltari Council addressed the galaxy with a message that would change everything. For thousands of years, we have feared the emergence of Deathworld species. We have quarantined their worlds and prepared for conquest. But we never asked ourselves a simple question. What if we were wrong? The transmission was broadcast from Serenitas, showing the rebuilt capital city where humans and Veltari worked. Side by side. You fear them because they are strong. We love them because they choose to be kind. The galaxy has always needed protectors who could go where others couldn't, fight what others wouldn't, and survive what others couldn't imagine. Humanity isn't the Deathworld threat you feared. They are the Deathworld guardians you never knew. You needed. The message ended with footage of human Veltari rescue ships heading toward the Centauri sector, where a solar flare had threatened to destroy an entire civilization. While other species debated and formed committees, the Alliance simply went to help. Captain So Kira stood on the bridge of his ship as they approached the disaster zone. Beside him, Navigator An Veldara studied the sensor readings of the stellar phenomena that could kill millions. The radiation levels are beyond anything most species can survive, An reported. Good thing we're not most species, So replied. He activated the ship's communication system. This is the Alliance vessel. New Dawn, responding to your distress. Call. We're from Earth and Serenitas. We got your message. Behind them, a fleet of ships crewed by humans, and Veltari moved into the disaster zone. They carried medical supplies, radiation shielding.